On December 31, 1967, the stage was set for the NFL championship game between the Green Bay Packers and the Dallas Cowboys at Lambeau Field in Green Bay, Wisconsin, a contest destined to be remembered not just for its stakes or the caliber of the teams involved, but for the bone-chilling conditions that turned this championship into an icy crucible of willpower. Fittingly called the Ice Bowl, the game would go down in history as one of pro football's most dramatic matchups, pitting two iconic coaches, Vince Lombardi and Tom Landry, against each other in a showdown defined by grit, strategy, and a willingness to endure unrelenting cold. Even before the opening kickoff, the brutal conditions were obvious. The temperature at Lambeau Field was recorded at around -15 degrees Fahrenheit, with wind chill dipping toward -40 or worse. The field's newly installed heating system failed under the strain of the sub-zero environment, freezing the playing surface into something closer to concrete than turf. By the time fans arrived, many wrapped in thick parkas, fur hats, and multiple layers of clothing, it was already clear that the day would be as much a test of survival as it was a battle for football supremacy. Conditions were so extreme that referees reported having their whistle tips freeze, forcing them to rely on voice commands and hand gestures to signal starts and stops. Some players recounted feeling little more than numbing pain in their hands and feet from the moment they stepped onto the field. The significance of the game itself could not be overstated. Under Vince Lombardi, the Packers had carved out a reputation as a professional dynasty, having already captured 4 NFL championships, including the first-ever Super Bowl, within the preceding decade. Led by Bart Starr at quarterback, with a formidable rushing attack and a defense that prided itself on discipline, the Packers represented the gold standard in pro football. Standing in their path, however, was Tom Landry's Dallas Cowboys, a franchise on the rise that had harnessed a roster of stars and a modern, innovative approach on both offense and defense. The Cowboys, featuring players like Don Meredith at quarterback and Bullet Bob Hayes at wide receiver, had the speed and cunning to challenge Lombardi's tried-and-true strategy. This contest would decide which of these formidable teams would earn the NFL crown and secure a trip to face the AFL champion in Super Bowl II. As the first quarter got underway, the cold was so severe that even simple ball handling posed a major challenge. The frozen pigskin felt like a rock in the players' hands, passes sailed unpredictably through the crisp air, and running backs braced themselves for the sting of any defensive tackle. The Packers, accustomed to the chilly Wisconsin climate, tried to find an early advantage by leaning on the running game, with halfback Donnie Anderson and fullback Chuck Mercian grinding out short yardage. Bart Starr, known for his unwavering calm, directed the offense with composure, carefully selecting safer throws and keeping a close watch on Dallas's formidable linebacker. Despite the best planning, though, the conditions forced both teams to adapt on the fly. Receivers wore gloves that made them clumsy, while defenders slid around on the slick field, struggling to maintain traction. On the Cowboys' side, Tom Landry saw little reason to shy away from his balanced offense. Quarterback Don Meredith attempted to spread the Packers' secondary by employing sets that featured the lightning-quick Bob Hayes, hoping a single missed tackle or slip on the ice might result in a long touchdown. However, Hayes, accustomed to Texas weather, found the weather biting to the point of near incapacitation. The Cowboys' running backs, including Dan Reeves and Walt Garrison, endeavored to take advantage of the often icy footing under Green Bay's linemen, but each positive yard came at the cost of numb hands and battered knees. The turning point in the first half arrived when the Packers' defense managed to force a fumble in the swirling winds, pouncing on the ball deep in Dallas territory. A short field positioned the Packers advantageously, and Bart Starr capitalized with a swift scoring drive. Even as the fans roared approval, breath turned to frosty plumes in the air, and the players hustled back to the sideline to huddle near heated benches, though these provided precious little warmth. Despite the cold, the stadium was electric, recognizing that any score might end up deciding the game. Over on the Cowboys' sideline, Tom Landry urged calm, reminding his squad that they had faced adversity before and come back stronger, though maybe never in a climate this harsh. By halftime, the scoreboard suggested a closely fought duel, with the Packers clinging to a small lead. During those brief moments in the locker room, trainers scrambled to treat frostbitten extremities and massage life back into half-frozen muscle. Lombardi, notorious for his demanding style, urged his players to ignore the cold and remain laser-focused on their assignment. Landry similarly rallied the Cowboys, emphasizing small strategic adjustments to counter Green Bay's resilience. It was clear to both sides that the margin for error was razor-thin. One ill-timed slip could determine the champion. As the teams emerged for the third quarter, it seemed the cold had only grown harsher. The sun lingered low on the horizon, offering scant heat. Some spectators resorted to warming themselves with coffee spiked by their favorite beverages, though most felt their eyelashes icing over the moment they blinked. On the field, the Cowboys discovered their rhythm, mounting a gritty drive behind Don Meredith's short passing game and spirited runs by Dan Reeves. The freezing defense of the Packers could only contain so much. Eventually, the Cowboys punched the ball into the end zone, taking the lead and seizing momentum. The sudden shift in the scoreboard quieted the Lambeau crowd, and for the first time, it appeared that the visitors from sunny Dallas might wrest the championship out of Green Bay's frostbitten hands. In the fourth quarter, with time draining away, the stakes soared to epic levels. The Packers' offense, anchored by Starr's measured leadership, responded with a methodical drive. They inched their way downfield, leaning on Mercian and Anderson while mixing in critical completions to Boyd Dowler. To many observers, each completed pass felt miraculous, given the ice-slick football and numbed fingertip. The tension in the stadium was palpable. Every spectator knew that whoever struck last might well emerge victorious. Eventually, the Packers found themselves deep in Cowboys territory, trailing by a narrow margin as the clock ticked under a minute. Twice, Bart Starr attempted handoffs near the goal line, but the icy turf foiled the blocking, leaving the Packers inches short of the end zone. With no timeouts left, and the risk of letting the clock run out, Starr made a momentous decision. He suggested to Lombardi that instead of risking another handoff, he, Starr, should keep the ball himself on a quarterback sneak. Lombardi, with his characteristic directness, famously answered, "Then run it, and let's get the hell out of here." The huddle broke. The exhausted Packers lined up at the goal line, and Starr took the snap. Thanks to a crucial block by guard Jerry Kramer, Starr dove behind center Ken Bowman, slipped past the Dallas defensive line, and broke the plane for the touchdown. The stadium exploded in jubilation as the official raised his arms to signal the score. Players, some of whom could no longer feel their faces or limbs, leapt up and down, adrenaline temporarily overpowering the cold. That final plunge would seal the Packers' victory, 21-17, in a game so fierce that it would take on mythic stature in the decades to come. Bart Starr's winning quarterback sneak became the iconic image of the Ice Bowl, reprinted and recounted in highlight reels and interviews for generations. Lombardi, stoic in victory, had once again proven that disciplined execution and unbreakable fortitude were hallmarks of his Green Bay dynasty. In the aftermath, the Cowboys walked off with heads low, yet they earned widespread respect for their resilience and their willingness to fight in an environment utterly foreign to them. Within a few years, Tom Landry and his Dallas squad would become Super Bowl champions themselves, launching a period of sustained success that would see them nicknamed America's Team. The lessons learned in Sub-Zero Lambeau that day undoubtedly helped shape Landry's future approach to big games. For the Packers, the Ice Bowl represented the high point of their dynasty under Lombardi, culminating in another NFL championship and a subsequent victory in Super Bowl II. Soon thereafter, Lombardi left to coach the Washington Redskins, and Bart Starr, though revered, eventually made way for new faces as the franchise rebuilt. Yet the legacy they forged on that frigid field remains a precious piece of NFL lore. Football analysts still point to the quarterback sneak heard round the world as a perfect blend of strategy, courage, and last-second heroics. Many fans and players who experienced the Ice Bowl have likened the ordeal to an expedition in polar conditions rather than a traditional football game. Stories persist of spectators suffering frostbite, of sideline reporters whose pens refused to write, of cameramen whose lenses frosted over. Indeed, the spectacle transcended normal boundaries of sport and became a testament to human endurance. Decades later, sports documentaries and television specials continue to revisit the images. Lombardi pacing the sidelines in a thick coat, steam billowing from Bart Starr's mouth as he barked signals, the Dallas defensive line struggling to brace against the final surge. The near-mythical aura of the Ice Bowl only grows with each retelling. When modern fans question how athletes from earlier eras would fare against today's professional, the conversation inevitably drifts toward the sheer conditions of the Ice Bowl. Without advanced cold-weather gear or modern heated fields, these teams braved temperatures that could stop a city in its tracks. They played through it, forging a standard of toughness that remains the gold measure for future generations. Even with all the technological advancements and improved field conditions available now, few contests have approached the brutal environment of that day in 1967. It stands as a reminder that sometimes, in sports and in life, greatness is not just about having talent or making the right play, it's also about surviving, adapting, and daring to keep going. Today, if you stroll through Green Bay and mention the Ice Bowl, you'll often see faces light up with pride, locals whose parents or grandparents might have been in the stands that day, or who themselves grew up hearing legendary accounts of how their city bore witness to the ultimate battle against the cold. Many maintain that the spirit of Titletown was forever crystallized that day, under the watchful eye of Lombardi. The field itself, which has gone through countless renovations, still conjures memories of that final quarterback sneak, as if the very ground could recall Bart Starr's triumphant lunge over the goal line. In the broader tapestry of professional football, the game's place in history is unshakable. It embodied the old-school ethos of the NFL, smaller rosters, rudimentary protective gear compared to today's standards, and a kind of raw confrontation in which heart and determination sometimes proved as crucial as skill. The Ice Bowl was also a hinge point, taking place just as the Super Bowl era dawned. It was a transitional moment. Lombardi would soon move on, the Cowboys would soon rise, and the league's identity would continue evolving into the megasport it is today. But that cold December afternoon in 1967 remains a frozen snapshot of grit and perseverance. All these years later, frost, faith, and football, the legendary Ice Bowl, continues to resonate as a story told whenever the weather forecast calls for sub-zero playoff games or when fans want a benchmark for harsh conditions. Beyond the scoreboard, beyond even the Hall of Fame careers involved, the game stands for something timeless, the belief that football, at its core, is a test not just of skill, but of the human spirit's capacity to endure. When Bart Starr dove across the line behind Jerry Kramer's block, he did more than secure another championship. He etched a moment into football folklore that would forever illustrate how a team, no matter the odds or the bitter cold, can rise above and find victory.